Some stories feel engineered to be unbelievable until the details are checked, the interviews are recorded, and the pieces still fit. This one begins in a poor village in northern India in 1984 with a young mother cradling her first child and ends with a woman waking from death insisting she is someone else entirely. Good evening and welcome to Midnight Horror Society. Here we take the strange and the chilling and tell them slowly, like whispers meant for the night. Before we begin, take a second to like the video and subscribe only if you feel at home here. In the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always comforting to see how many of us are awake together in the dark. So dim the lights. Let the sound of the night, rain, crickets, or just the quiet of your room settle around you. Get comfortable. And when you're ready, let's step into tonight's story. By the end of December 1984, Sumitra held her newborn son almost constantly. The baby bound to her chest as she swept the hard-packed floor or stirred lentils over a smoking clay stove. She'd wanted a child for as long as she could remember. Her own childhood had been shadowed. A mother lost too early. A father gone to distant labor. A cousin filling the gaps where parents should have been. Marriage had given her shelter, but her husband traveled for work. Most days she lived with her in-laws in their low hut, trying to please people who were not her people. The baby changed all of that. With him tied against her heartbeat, she didn't feel alone. One morning in early 1985, she was walking the dusty path to the village well, bucket swinging, boy tight to her chest, when she halted so abruptly the bucket thumped the ground. A nearby man turned at the sound and saw Sumitra standing rigid, fingers bent back at an impossible angle. Her eyes rolled white. Her teeth ground side to side with a dry, cracking scrape that raised the hairs on his arms. The baby started to scream. A small crowd formed. Before anyone could move, the spell broke. Sumitra blinked, confused, cheeks wet, embarrassed by the staring faces. She gathered the bucket and hurried on as if nothing had happened. Weeks later, it happened again, longer now. Her father-in-law found her in the kitchen, rigid, eyes upturned, unresponsive to shaking. 10 minutes before she came back. No memory. By May, the village had learned to recognize the episodes. They lasted hours. In some, Sumitra spoke. "Help," she would cry, clutching her head. "My skull is being crushed." Then her voice would drop to a thread. "I can only see dark." The local healer examined her repeatedly. He found no fever, no wasting illness, nothing he could name, just the trances. On July 16th, 1985, 6 months into this, Sumitra stiffened mid-task and with eerie calm said, "In 3 days, I will die." By then, dread ruled the household. She refused to touch her son for fear she'd fall into a spell and drop him. The boy's grandmother took over his care. Her husband stayed home, forfeiting wages, watching her like a sentry. On July 19th, the predicted day, Sumitra kept herself away from knives, fire, stairs, anything sharp, hot, or high. The afternoon passed without incident. Relief loosened the knots in everyone's shoulders. At dusk, she stepped outside for air. A friend across the lane waved and began to cross. Sumitra smiled, lifted a hand, and froze. Her arms rose to her forehead, fingers clawing at empty air. Her breathing turned ragged and loud. The friend reached her, helpless, whispering her name. The clawing stopped. Sumitra's hands fell to her sides. A deep rattling drone rolled out of her throat and sank lower, lower, until it broke. Then nothing. Standing upright, she wasn't breathing. The scream drew the village. The healer arrived, pressed 2 fingers to her neck, an ear to her chest, peered into her eyes. "She is dead," he said. They lowered her rigid body onto the packed earth outside the hut. There would be no ambulance, no official. Here, death rituals must be tended quickly, for faith and for health. Women washed her with careful hands, oils slicking her cheeks. Men set off to gather wood for the pyre. Children were called indoors, doors latched. People spoke little. Some wept. Most watched the line her body made against the darkening yard and tried not to look at the impossible, how the day had matched her prediction to the hour. Whispers rippled. Had something taken her? Was it still here? As the sun thinned to a line along the horizon, a woman brushing Sumitra's hair gasped and lurched back, brush clattering. Others stared. Under closed lids, Sumitra's eyes flicked left, right. Her chest lifted on a sudden breath. A long exhale shuddered out of her. Her eyelids opened. She sat bolt upright. The women stumbled away. What shocked them most was not the movement, but the color in her face, the life. For 45 minutes she had been gone. No pulse, no breath, a pallor you don't mistake. Now she wiped oil from her cheeks like someone annoyed with ceremonial fussing and tried to stand. The healer pushed through and steadied her, checked again. Pulse present, heartbeat strong, pupils responsive. He turned to the ring of neighbors and smiled broadly. "You have witnessed a miracle," he said. "She has returned." Her husband dropped to his knees, sobbing with relief, and lunged to embrace her. She recoiled as if from a blow, palms up to ward him off. The healer stepped between them, murmuring that shock could twist a mind, that rest might return her to herself. They led her to bed. She slept. At dawn, she rose clear-eyed, walked into the main room, and, at the sight of her husband and in-laws, bolted for the door. The healer and her husband caught her in the lane. When he took her arm, she wrenched free and snapped, "How dare you touch another man's wife?" Back inside, she raked the rooms with a stranger's scrutiny and spat, "This is not my home. You are not my family." She kept repeating a name none of them knew, Shiva or Tripathi, accusing her in-laws of killing her. The changes mounted. She refused to hold the son she had once clutched to her chest. She demanded Rinku and Tinku, names that meant nothing to anyone there. She would not eat from their pots or plates. She rapped her sari in a different urbane style. Her voice shifted, lighter, quicker, educated, and her manner turned sharp. At night, she wrote letters, long, pleading letters, to people her family had never heard of, begging them to come take her home. Neighbors muttered madness or possession. Her family braced for the long work of protecting her from herself. On October 20th, 1985, a knock sounded at the door. Sumitra's husband opened it to find an older man in a suit and polished shoes, clothing so out of place in their village it felt theatrical. He held a thick leather-bound album to his chest, gold-edged pages glinting. His voice was soft. "My name is Ram Tripathi. Is there a young woman here who has begun acting differently?" Suspicion warred with confusion. The husband told the man to wait, turned and walked to the back room. "There's a stranger asking for you," he said flatly. Sumitra looked up and, for the first time in months, smiled, a radiant, relieved smile. She ran to the door and flung herself into the visitor's arms. He stiffened, startled, the album pinned between them. She leaned close and whispered a single word, "Papa." For a heartbeat, his face darkened. Anger, grief, denial all at once. Then he pulled back, opened the album, and motioned for her to sit with him on the low wall outside. "Tell me who these people are," he said, pointing to a group photograph. Without hesitation, she named them all, names her husband did not recognize. He turned a page, another clustered. She named them too. Page after page, The same. Faces, and then names in a voice not her own. He stopped at a single portrait and tapped the image. And this? Sumitra's breath quickened. Her mouth shaped a grim line. "My sister-in-law," she said. "She killed me. She hit my head with a brick." The album dropped to the ground. The man's arms went around her. They wept like people who had remembered each other after a very long separation. Inside, the visitor told a story that reshaped the room. Shiva, the name Sumitra had insisted was hers, had lived in a city 60 miles away. She was well-educated, well-off, married with 2 small sons. Her youngest had been born within days of Sumitra's boy. But where Sumitra had felt her life finally open, Shiva's had narrowed into darkness. Her in-laws despised her education and her family. Conflict built like storm heat in a closed room. She wrote letters to her relatives describing nights of nightmares and dread. In May 1985, around the time Sumitra began speaking in her trances, a public fight ignited over whether Shiva would attend a family wedding. On the night of May 18th, neighbors saw Shiva's in-laws carrying her limp body along the railway tracks in the dark. When confronted, they said she was ill and needed a hospital. In the morning, Shiva's body was found on the tracks near the station. Her in-laws told police she had killed herself by stepping in front of a train. Her uncle and sister saw no tearing or mangling you'd expect from an impact, just a severe head wound, as if something heavy had smashed her skull. Before her own family could intervene, the in-laws had the body cremated. The police accepted the suicide story. The case ended without an investigation. Shiva's father, Ram, did not accept it. Months later, he heard a rumor from a distant village. A young woman had died and returned calling herself Shiva, demanding her sons Rinku and Tinku, writing to people who did not live there. He arrived with his album, ready to disprove a cruel hoax. The album didn't disprove it. It did the opposite. In the house, small mismatches snapped into place. The higher city accent, the new sari style, the refusal to eat from their utensils, the letters mailed to names no one in the village recognized, names Ram knew very well. The boys' nicknames, Rinku and Tinku, were exact. The claim of a brick and a sister-in-law matched long-held suspicions and the wound the family had seen. Sumitra's husband stood by the door, stunned. The child in the next room whimpered, and Sumitra flinched, not with guilt now, but with grief for a life that had ended on a railway. Word of the case spread far beyond the village. Investigators who study unusual memories in children and cases suggestive of reincarnation traveled to interview Sumitra, her family, and Shiva's relatives. They documented statements, timelines, and behavior changes. One such group is known for rigorous fieldwork in India, based at a major American university. Their conclusion was not a courtroom verdict, but it was stark. The case did not present as a hoax. The convergence of names, places, habits, languages, letters, and specific claims, especially those not publicly known, was difficult to explain away. Local authorities eventually reopened aspects of the death and questioned members of Shiva's in-law family. Some charges were brought. In the end, Sumitra's testimony, however compelling, was ruled inadmissible in court. Officially, the death was never solved. Unofficially, few believed the tracks told the whole story. From that season forward, Sumitra lived as Shiva. Shiva's parents accepted her. Visits passed with the complicated ease of people who know and don't know each other at once. Over time, Sumitra also turned back toward the child she'd borne and the man she'd married. Grief and duty braided together into a life she could carry. She died in 1998. It's easy to say possession or trauma, to file everything under words that make the mystery smaller. But there are facts here that resist being filed. A predicted death, a body without breath for 3/4 of an hour, a return, a stranger at a door with a book of faces, names spoken without a pause, private details aligned. If you've come this far, tell me, was Sumitra a woman whose mind shattered under stress, or was she the second vessel for a life that ended on a railway track? And if it's the latter, how many stories like this do we never hear? Drop your take in the comments. I'm listening.